Hi and welcome to another Retribution Paladin for Battle for Azeroth little video. They seem to be coming thick and fast. So, as many of you know, I play a Retribution Paladin, and a few weeks ago there was very exciting news on the Battle for Azeroth Alpha, because we sort of felt that, you know, Blizzard were just going to basically take Legion of all classes and specs, but, you know, for us, Ret, and basically say, Ashbringer, give it to me, give it to me. There we go, thank you. Now you toddle off to Battle for Azeroth. Which wasn't very exciting when we're losing all of our artifact abilities. And so, yeah, and the best we thought that was happening, well, we get to do Wake of Ashes as a talent. And then a few weeks ago, it all changed. All of a sudden, Judgment had changed, our Mastery had changed, and we had a whole set of new talents, including some exciting returning ones like Inquisition and Hammer of Wrath. It was all fantastic. So I felt that, do you know what? We've actually got some forward-thinking ideas here on the class development team, and they have traction. I'm not saying anything bad about, you know, the majority potentially even of class developers that worked on Legion, but at least now we were, you know, the ideas that were good seem to be getting some traction there, and I thought, you know what, they deserve cookies. In fact, more than cookies, muffins, the very height of reward. So the next day I was trawling through the internet. I was trying to find somewhere in California that would deliver something nice to them. And I eventually, most of the places, it was like ringers and things like that. I'm not ringing California. So they were shut as well anyway. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning in California when I was trying to find this thing. But I found somewhere that took online orders. And I found a nice little gift box of like cookies, brownies and muffins. At least that's what should have gone. And sent a little thank you note and sent it off. So apparently it's arrived at the right place now. This was over a week ago, but never mind. Internal mail, I know what that's like at my place as well. And so, yeah, someone tweeted, someone copied me into a tweet. I didn't know that this person had tweeted, saying, oh, you know, someone's given me some cookies, isn't that nice? And thank you very much. And it was the cookies I'd sent. And so, you know, that was well deserved, by the way. And anyway, so that same class developer then came onto the Paladin Discord this evening to basically say, oh, you know, someone's told me it was such and such a person that sent them, thank you very much. And also that, you know, MD, who's an NA-based who's actually started the class Discord, the Hammer of Wrath Discord, he's been doing a survey as well, and he said, you know, thank you very much, the results of that survey have reached them as well. And he basically started chatting with people about Battle for Azeroth Ret Paladin in the Paladin Discord. And he must have been there for a good hour. Unfortunately, I had to disappear about halfway through because, you know, I was starting my stream, the Azeroth review. So I talked a little bit about it in there, but not too much because, you know, obviously there's a lot of people in the Azeroth review that are not necessarily Ret Paladins. So that's why I'm going to go through what he's basically said. And it's, do you know what? I was quite excited a couple of weeks ago when these changes hit. And I'm really excited now given what he's said. You know, he's going to be getting fine chocolate soon if he's not careful. So, the first thing to note was, he did start off by saying, because everyone was asking him questions, as you would, and as I say, he was there for a good hour, you know, so all this nonsense about class discords being toxic, and Paladins apparently are supposed to be one of the worst ones. Why would a developer be chatting to us for an hour if it's that bad? Rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Class Discord's the best place to go to discuss stuff. Anyway. So he basically said, nice little joke, and he said, tell you what, whatever you ask for in the next 12 seconds, I'll put in the game. And everyone basically went, Zandalari Paladins, Zandalari Paladins. Unfortunately, he said he doesn't get a say in class race combinations, so we had to move on. But let's go through some of the things he was talking about. And it might give you an idea about the sort of feedback to give as well. Obviously, it's always better to give feedback on the sorts of things that you know the developers are actively thinking about. And this is a real insight into this. I wish this sort of stuff happened all the time because it gives us a real insight into what the class developers are thinking with the class and spec And it gives us the opportunity to then to tailor our feedback along those lines, and we can actually come to a real working agreement. It's absolutely fantastic. If only this sort of thing happened more often. So in terms of Greater Judgment, so he said he's not entirely happy with the way Greater Judgment is. In fact, quite a lot of the talents that I identified as could do with work with exactly the same things he was talking about here. For example, he was talking about with Hammer of Wrath. I don't think we're going to get it baseline, by the way. He didn't explicitly say no, but I think that's the implication. But what he did ask was, is it better to sort of have it as it is now, where it's an execute, but it can also be used during Avenging Wrath? Or is it better to only have it as an execute, but it does more damage? And I think everyone basically said, I certainly said, do you know what, we'd rather it was just an execute that did a lot more damage. So, you know, that feedback's gone straight away. If you have a view on that, we know that that's something he's actively thinking about. Forums, go to the forums. But yeah, he was talking about Greater Judgment, you know, a bit unsure about it. And we were talking, and then he sort of happened to say as well that he wasn't too sure about the Judgment debuff. In other words, just, you know, 25% extra damage to your next spender when used on that target. He wasn't too sure about that one. And I suggested, well, what about a buff, you know, rather than a debuff? He wasn't completely opposed to that idea. He did, however, say the idea of judging someone suggests a debuff more, which I cheekily tried to suggest. The buff comes from feeling good because we've judged the wicked. I'm not sure how much sway that will take. I sort of suspect it's probably going to be a debuff, but he's certainly not opposed to it being a buff. But I think he just thinks the effect itself is a bit underwhelming, could be a bit more exciting. So if anyone has any ideas for that, because that's not set in stone, if you can think of something more interesting that Judgment can do, then we know he's actively thinking about that. And when it comes to Greater Judgment, he's even thinking of going somewhere completely different with this. Here's what he posted, an idea that he's got at the moment for replacing Greater Judgment on the talent on BFA. And it's Zeal, but it's not Zeal as we know it now. It's a different, just using the name. And it says, although I do notice, you'll notice here, if you haven't already, it uses the same icon that Eye for an Eye has in the alpha. So, but that's possibly just an icon change. So it says, Judgment grants you Zeal, increasing the attack speed of your next 3 auto attacks by 100%. Now, that's not that fantastic. Apart from anything else, we don't really get any effect from auto attacks. However, I think there was an idea suggested by someone. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to read this whole thing because, as I say, I had to go off streaming. But there was an idea I suggested maybe that it does damage as holy damage. And that seemed to get some interest. So it might well be that, you know, this is where we go along with it. It might be that Greater Judgment doesn't become a thing and that something similar to this, not quite like this, this is just a rough cut, something similar to this replaces it instead. Again, if you've got any thoughts on that, anything we talk about here, we know that they're actively thinking about. Get your opinions on the forums. Simple as that. Now, I don't know at what point I'm bringing this video out. I'm hopefully done it quite soon. Obviously, I'm conscious of time. I've got to go to bed at some point. But there's 2 videos I want to do based on what he said. He talks about a couple of things that are of interest to everyone, not just Ret Paladins. So one of the things will be, and one of the big things is 2-target cleave. I'll just put it quickly in here. But basically, we're not going to get 2-target cleave. But neither is almost everyone else. 2-target cleave is going to be super specialist, but I am going to talk about that in another video. At the point at which this comes out, maybe it's already out, maybe it's coming out soon. It will be coming out soon though, so make sure you check that out. If you've not already subscribed, well, there you go, there's a good reason to subscribe. So anyway, we also discussed Divine Vengeance. Now this at the moment is the talent that means when you use Divine Storm on at least 3 targets, but why would you use it on fewer? That you've got a 50% chance to get a Holy Power refunded. The benefit of this is, imagine you're on 5 Holy Power, you fire through a Divine Storm, you're now on 2 Holy Power. But if you get that Holy Power refunded, you can fire off another one immediately. All right. But my issue with it is 50%, although it's a high chance, it's unreliable. You've got to check whether or not you can fire off the second one, or just do it anyway, and just if it doesn't happen, just switch to something else. But it is unreliable, and he himself is actively looking for something. He did actually say that it could go as it is now, but he's definitely on the lookout for something better. Now, I straight away suggested a final verdict thing as being quite a popular idea. So, first of all, he sort of suggested he didn't like the idea of changing Templar's verdict. Because he was thinking, obviously, you know, actual final verdict in WoD changed what Templar's verdict did. But I'm not talking about that. What we're talking about is the fact that what it did in WoD is use Templar's verdict and that would buff your next Divine Storm. So the idea is on AoE, it was a benefit to you to use a Templar's verdict, then a Divine Storm, then a Templar's verdict, then a Divine Storm. So you wouldn't actually be changing Templar's verdict, you would just simply be getting a proc off it that buffed your next Divine Storm. Sorry. Now, initially he wasn't too sure about the idea of using Templar's verdict in AoE at all. He just wants us to use Divine Storm. So I'm not sure that this would gain that much traction. But what he did then say is, he says, okay, so I would make TV increase the damage of your next DS by 100% or whatever, creating the spender weaving AoE rotation. And here's something interesting. Again, I'm going to put this in the video for all once. And he says, I would make that as a middle or right column talent because it's promoting a sort of non-intuitive rotation. So he seems open to it. Doesn't mean to say he's going to go for it. So again, if you've got strong views about that, post that. But what we have to be mindful of, and this is going to come up time and time again, it's easy to say, oh yeah, that would be a great talent, that would be a great talent, that would be a great talent. We've got to be aware there's only 21 talents. And they have themes as well. So when we're saying we'd really like a particular talent that's not currently in, what we're actually also saying is we'd like another one on the row where it naturally fits to be removed. So if this one was done, it wouldn't go where Divine Vengeance goes now. It would have to displace something else. So just food for thought on that one. But anyway, so the next thing is, I mean, to do with Divine Vengeance in general, what he said was, he says it was definitely a little challenging to design a simple passive Divine Storm talent, because that's what it's supposed to be. So the left-hand column are supposed to be very easy to use, essentially passive skills. They're supposed to be, and the reason for this is because the idea is that someone who doesn't play a class or doesn't think about a class, they're probably going to pick the talents that are nearest on the left because people naturally just, oh, I don't know which one, that one. They're probably more likely to do the one on the left. So they deliberately make the ones on the left the easier ones to use, generally passives. So that's a conscious decision. So they mustn't have 3 talents in a row that all require some skill or understanding to use. So there comes the difficulty. So Final Verdict would not simply, if it was coming at all, would not simply replace Divine Vengeance. It would have to replace something else, or something else further along the line would have to be considered simple enough to simply be put there. And given that the other 2 things are Wake of Ashes and Consecration, I mean, Consecration's fairly straightforward, I suppose, isn't it? You could just put Consecration there, maybe. Yeah, that would work. That would work. Anyway, the next thing was, he did say, because someone suggested Divine Tempest. Okay, we want that. He said, yeah, Divine Tempest was a common suggestion, but throwing line attacks really isn't a great baseline experience. So I think the strong suggestion there is we're not going to get it baseline, so it would have to be a talent. And I don't know whether the suggestion there was that also it wouldn't necessarily be a left-hand talent. It would have to replace, say, Consecration, or you're not touching Wake of Ashes. But anyway, but onto the subject of Consecration, because someone was saying about Divine Hammers, well, you could have Divine Hammers instead. He did actually say it was a toss-up between Consecration and Divine Hammers. Consecration felt like it'd be sad to cut completely from Ret, and Divine Hammers is very similar to Divine Storm, so went with Consecration. Now, I'm not necessarily saying I agree with that reasoning, but I definitely agree with the result, even though I'd probably prefer Divine Hammers. I think people would go mad if you removed Consecration. People are delighted that things like Hammer of Wrath are coming back. Consecration remains a very, for some reason, a very popular spell for Retribution Paladins. So to not have it available, I think, would be a very unpopular decision. So I would certainly back the idea that it remains. I would much rather see it wander around with you. Consecration would be so much better if it moved with you. But anyway, now, do you know what? I'm going to wait with this one. The next thing he said is going to get a lot of people very, very excited. I'm not kidding. I'm not saying it's coming in, by the way. He's not saying it's coming in. But isn't this exciting? Look at this. So someone said, I think I may be alone on this, but I really like Long Arm of the Law as a mobility talent. To which the guy said, you are definitely not alone. So, if anyone would really like the idea of Long Arm of the Law, guess what you should do? That's right, go onto the forums. The official forums, of course. By all means, try and post something on MMO Champion or WoW or somewhere else. Yeah, sure, every now and then a developer has a quick scan of it. But the best place is always the official forums. Community managers read everything there. Anything of interest is drawn to their attention. Next one now. So Shield of Vengeance became a topic of discussion. Again, these are all the topics I've been talking about as well. It is fantastic. The big issue we have with Shield of Vengeance, first of all, it does damage. If it does damage, it's a damage ability. But the problem with it is we have to have this shield completely consumed. Completely consumed. If we consume most of it, 90% of it, and then the timer runs out, we do no damage with it at all. 0 damage. So basically what people were saying is, look, what we need it to do is to do damage based on how much is absorbed. So he said a few interesting things here. First of all, he said, defensives becoming DPS is fraught. I try to avoid when possible. Oh my God, where was this guy for Legion? Seriously. Seriously. So then, basically, this is the sequence now. So Earth said, the problem is that SOV is damage in the first place. In second place, we need to fully consume it. MD says, for example, having 80k damage left at the end of the duration. And Earth, if it stays damaged, we can't have that. The guy basically then said, I think I can make that change. This is fantastic. Absolutely amazing. Then he did go on to say, removing damage from the Shield of Vengeance and Touch of Karmas of the world, while that makes sense in a vacuum for gameplay, I don't think it would be the right thing to do for the game. Best we can hope for is to make slight adjustments and change player mentality so they're not just standing in poo for damage, okay? So they're definitely going to be looking at this. Because the only way to change our behaviour is to change the way the spell works, as he's acknowledged there. So it's still going to do damage, but the concept that we have to consume the whole thing before it does any damage, he's basically said he can make that change. Then he also said, I made Shield of Vengeance 30% of maximum HP, so it doesn't have the scaling problems it's having right now. And then he also said, as a result, it also won't crit, because that's also a thing. You know, we can be disappointed when this thing crits. It's like, you can use Shield of Vengeance, and you know a certain amount of damage is coming out, and it'll usually break it. But if your shield crits and therefore becomes double the absorbed shield, from a defensive point, that's fantastic. But it's not defensive. It's an offensive ability if it does damage. And that can leave you with the damage shield not absorbed, which means actually you're disappointed it critted, because now you do no damage. Boo-hoo. So that's basically some of the things he had to say before he had to pop off to lunch. Really excited about this. This, you know, I already thought, given the changes that we've already had since that couple of weeks ago, whenever it was, it's going in the right direction. It's absolutely going in the right direction. And we've seen now. It's carrying on going in the right direction. We may not get everything that we want. I'm not going to get everything that I personally want. I know that. But what we are going to get is something that sounds like it's going to make sense. It's going to be good. Okay? So what I would strongly suggest is when you're putting your feedback, obviously when you're putting feedback on the forums, you must be honest and put down what you really feel. But I would say your most fruitful feedback is going to be anything along the lines of what was discussed here, because that is obviously the things that he is currently mulling around and thinking about. And if you want some real influence, now is the time to do it, and those are the topics to do it on. So I hope you enjoy this video. I hope you found it insightful. Another great reason to join your class Discord, Hammer of Wrath for Paladins. Thanks very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with other people who need the good news spreading. Until next time, I'll see you later.